According to Kristen Largan in 2017 publishings in Finding God Among Our Neighbors, an Interfaith Systematic Theology, Confucianism originated in ancient China and developed within a cultural context that responded to social and philosophical challenges. It was based on the teachings of Confucius, a Chinese teacher, philosopher, and political thinker, and it focused on living a good and moral life, building strong relationships, and creating a peaceful society. Generally speaking, key values of Confucianism include kindness, respect for traditions and rituals, and honoring one's parents and elders. Rather than being centered around religious ideals such as gods or an afterlife, Confucianism was concerned with how people should go about their everyday lives and how they can improve the world around them. More specifics on the ways of life within Confucianism can be found in the Analects of Confucius, a collection of sayings and conversations between Confucius and his disciples recorded after his death. The Analect's main purpose is to share his teachings on how to live a moral, respectful, and responsible life. Some of the excerpts are more or less commandments, such as, a young man is to be within his family and respectful outside it. He is to be earnest and faithful, overflowing in his love for living beings and intimate with those who are humane. If after such practice he has strength to spare, he may use it in the study of culture. Others are self-reflective and encourage introspectively looking inward on oneself, such as, each day I examine myself on 3 things. In planning on behalf of others, have I failed to be loyal? When dealing with friends, have I failed to be trustworthy? On receiving what has been transmitted, have I failed to practice it? In Imperial China, Confucian values played a central role in shaping gender roles and education. According to Confucian ideology, a woman's virtue lay in obedience, modesty, and domesticity. Women were taught to obey their father, husband, and sons and focus solely on managing the household. Education for women was considered unnecessary, sometimes even dangerous, as it might encourage them to challenge their subordinate role. However, despite these expectations, many women still found ways to engage in intellectual life. Some learned to read and write in private, and many expressed themselves through literature like poetry and painting. These forms of self-education allowed women to cultivate their talents and leave a cultural legacy, even if they had to do so quietly and outside of the formal institutions that were close to them. Li Qingzhao is one of the most remarkable female poets in Chinese history, and her life and work quietly challenged the strict Confucian values of her time. During her time, women were rarely encouraged to read, let alone write, but Li Qingzhao, born into a scholarly family, had access to books and learning from a young age. This gave her the unusual opportunity to study literature and develop her voice as a writer. This was a bold act in a society where women's silence was seen as a virtue. One of her famous poems that is said to reflect themes of youth, beauty, love, and subtle longing reads, "Stepping down from the swing, she smooths her soft, slender hands, her flimsy dress wet with light perspiration, a slim flower trembling with heavy dew. Spying a stranger, she walks hastily away in shyness. Her feet are bare socks, her gold hairpin fallen. Then she stops to lean against a gate, and looking back, makes as if sniffing a green plum." Through her poetry, Qingzhao defied expectations of how women were supposed to think and feel. Her poems were deeply personal and expressed emotions from joy and love to grief and loneliness in a way that was rare for any writer, let alone a woman. Through her poetry, Li Qingzhao proved that women could be thoughtful, artistic, and deeply expressive. Her legacy stands as a quiet but powerful challenge to the limitations Confucian values placed on women's roles in education. Yun Bing was a talented Chinese painter in Imperial China whose work also challenged the narrow roles assigned to women under Confucian ideals. She pursued art with remarkable skill and creativity, becoming especially known for her quote-unquote boneless style of painting, a technique that used delicate washes of color without outlines and often applied to images of flowers like the one on display. This style required a high level of artistic control and subtlety, showing that she was not only technically skilled but also innovative. Her paintings were praised by male scholars and collectors of the time, proving that a woman could earn respect in male-dominated fields. By making a name for herself through her art, Yun Bing showed that women had intellectual and artistic talents that extended far beyond what Confucian norms allowed. Throughout history, Confucian ideology has historically shaped and restricted women's roles in marriage and family. According to Dina Orozco in Confucius versus the Women of China, a feminist struggle, women are taught from a young age to follow the 3 obediences. They are specified as showing obedience to the father before marriage, obedience to the husband during marriage, and obedience to the son after the husband's death. According to Sanja Gao's article, Women Existing for Men, Confucianism and Social Injustice Against Women in China, these obediences put women in an automatic disadvantage because they are put in subordinate positions, especially when you add in the 4 virtues that are expected for women to follow throughout all their lives. According to Arthur Wright's Confucianism and Chinese Civilization, the 4 virtues include Ren, which focuses on moral behaviors. For women, this means showing selfless and nurturing behaviors towards family. The second virtue is Yi, which focuses on ethical decision-making. For women, this meant showing loyalty towards her husband by not remarrying after becoming a widow. The third virtue is Li, which focuses on social rituals and customs. For women, examples include following dress, speech, and manner conduct. The last virtue includes Ju, which focuses on wisdom. Since women had limited formal access to education, this wisdom was specifically wisdom on understanding one's role and making good judgment in domestic matters. According to Orozco, the 5 relationships include ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, elder brother and younger brother, and friend. Within the husband and wife relationship, the women are seen as an obedient follower of the husband rather than equality that is shown in the friend and friend relationship. This superior-inferior relationship plays on the yin-yang dichotomy, where women were considered yin, aka weak and passive, while men are considered yang, aka strong and active. Marriages were always imbalanced for Chinese women, yet were treated as a woman's only goal in life. Women were arranged for marriage during their teens to families with good social, economic, or political ties, as mentioned by Aaron Klein's What Can We Learn from Ancient Chinese Views of Marriage? Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy dives deeper about the gender roles within Confucian philosophy, specifically marriage. Once married, the wife is expected to bear a son in order to continue the family line. Women's status was based on whether or not they were able to birth a son. Even when the husband was away due to education or work, the wife was expected to cook, clean, and take care of children, even if the husband disappeared for years at a time, like she did in Susan Mann's The Talented Women of the Zhang Family. As stated for the second virtue, if the husbands were to pass away before the wife, they were expected to remain loyal and obey their sons. This cycle of a woman's marriage shows how these Confucian ideals shaped every part of their life, even if they're not currently married. Now, just like most things in history, there have been exceptions. According to The Impact of Confucianism on the Role of Women in Society, women began challenging Confucian ideals after the Qing dynasty fell and Western ideas were introduced. Examples of this include Qiu Hin leaving her arranged marriage because she saw it as a form of female enslavement. He Zhen believed marriage was a manipulation into patriarchal control, while Ling believed that marriage should be a choice as a form of personal autonomy. Movements such as the May 4th movement took into effect by allowing these women a voice. There were high levels of criticism towards arranged marriages, inferiority to husbands, and lack of women's education. While this movement sparked attention toward these topics, traditional norms are still affected by Confucian ideals by limiting women's opportunities and pushing them towards domestic household chores. In Orozco's article, even after the fall of Imperial China, Confucian values still persisted. For example, in East Asia, women are still expected to put their family first over a career since the man is the head of the household. While women do not typically have arranged marriages during their teen years anymore, there is still pressure on them to get married before a certain age, typically in their 20s. Several articles, including Lee's Confucianism and Feminist Concerns, Overcoming the Confucian Gender Complex, argue that there should be a reinterpretation of Confucian texts in order to remove the sexist practices while still preserving its ethical strengths. In Orozco's article, she uses the story of Hua Mulan to state that Confucianism itself cannot be changed, but the people who practice it can. As many may recall from the Disney movie, Mulan was a young woman who replaced her father due to his old age during battle. Unlike what is told during the movie, the parents had her support and Mulan held the Confucian ideals. All in all, Confucianism influenced the roles and expectations of women in traditional Chinese society, often limiting their freedom, education, and status. Despite these restrictions, many women found ways to express themselves, quietly challenging the system. Over time, these acts of defiance contributed to broader movements that questioned and pushed back against Confucian gender norms and ideals.